This is section 2.2. This is part 2. We are using the multiplication property of equality. And for this top problem here, we need to combine like terms over here. 11r minus 5r plus 6r. They all have r's, so we combine them. 11 minus 5 is 6. 6 plus 6 is 12. So that is a 12r is equal to 168. Now we want to get rid of this 12. That's a multiplier. So divide both sides by a 12. 168 divided by 12. And you get that x, or in case r, is equal to 14. So your solution there is 14. Okay. Now, most of the time, we use this property with a division because we end up with a number in front of our variable and we end up dividing both sides. If the number in front of your variable is a fraction, technically we're dividing both sides by 1/4 here, okay? Not the most practical way to get it done. We're going to have a couple of methods for dealing with fractions, but when you have simply a fraction in front of your variable, you have no other variables involved, nothing added or subtracted to this thing, just this. The easiest way to work this is to multiply both sides by the reciprocal. So the reciprocal is just the fraction flipped over. And the fraction is going to have the same sign. So, the reciprocal is going to have the same sign. So the reciprocal of 1/4, its reciprocal would be 4 over 1, or just 4. If I had a negative 1/4, its reciprocal would be negative 4 over 1. Reciprocals have the same sign. That doesn't apply to this problem, though. Our reciprocal is 4 over 1, so I'm going to multiply both sides by 4 over 1. And you can leave off the over 1 if you want to, it's just 4. When you're multiplying fractions, it's easy to keep the over 1 so you can see how they work. If you're multiplying by a whole number or an integer, it's less confusing maybe to leave off the 1. It's up to you. But when you multiply by reciprocals, you always get a positive 1. If you think about just your rule for multiplication, this would end up with 4 over 4. 4 over 4 is 1. Think of cross cancellation. Those cancel out. You have a 1. What I end up with here is y equal to negative 12 times 4 is negative 48. Negative 48 would be your answer there. Okay. This one looks like a different problem than this one, fundamentally different, because it doesn't look like we have a fraction. It looks like we're just dividing this number. But this is exactly the same thing as this. There's a 1 right there, understood? And I can write z over 6. This is exactly the same thing as 1/6 times z. I could have rewritten 1/4 y as y over 4, and that would be the same thing. So right here, it's exactly the same kind of problem as this. I'm going to multiply both sides by the reciprocal. The reciprocal of 1/6 is 6 over 1. So multiply both sides by 6 over 1, Maggie. 6 over 1. This cancels out. You have just z. And on the right-hand side, you have 12 times 6, which is 72. 72 should be your answer. Okay. And then your last problem from this section, negative 7/9 c is equal to 3/5. Here I'm going to multiply both sides by the reciprocal of negative 7/9. And the reciprocal is going to be negative 9 over 7. Multiply by negative 9 over 7. A negative times a negative is a positive, so that goes away. This would be, if you just multiply straight across, this would be 63 over 63, which is 1. You can think of them as cross-canceling. It's 1. You might just recognize that they're reciprocals, and so you're automatically going to get 1. Any way you think of it, you have just a C on the left. Now over here, okay, I'm multiplying two numbers together. One's a positive, one's a negative. Your answer is going to be negative. Now we can multiply straight across. We could cross cancel maybe, but we don't have any cancellations. So this is 3 times 9, which is 27. 5 times 7 is 35. So I get negative 27 over 35. One note I want to make for you. This is your answer. Note, with a negative fraction, it does not matter whether the negative is off to the side, if the negative is in the top of your fraction, or if the negative is in the bottom of the fraction. These are all the same value. I would reduce the fraction if it reduced. It doesn't reduce. So this is my final answer. Now, for whatever reason, we don't tend to see the negative written in the bottom very often. It becomes second nature. People either write it off to the side or up in the top. It's not wrong if it's written this way. You're just not often going to see it this way. That's the end of section 2.2.